In the world of UFO lore, few cases have captured as much attention as the Rendlesham Forest incident, a bizarre and chilling encounter that unfolded over multiple nights in December 1980. Nestled between two Anglo-American air bases, RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge, this quiet patch of Suffolk, England became the epicenter of what some consider Britain's Roswell. While most people know the story for its eerie reports of a glowing metallic craft landing in the woods, there's a lesser discussed but equally jaw-dropping detail. Another unidentified object was seen hovering over a nuclear weapons storage facility at Bentwaters, allegedly firing laser-like beams down into it. In an era of Cold War paranoia and nuclear tension, it's the kind of thing that keeps generals awake at night. This time on The Zach Show, I sit down solo to dive into the shocking story of the Rendlesham Forest incident, the much less discussed first-hand witness accounts of the UFO visiting the nuclear storage facility with live tactical nukes, the radar readings of the crafts from the encounter, the case for UAP transparency, the future of humanity as a species not alone in this universe, and more. My source for this podcast is the book UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings, more specifically the chapter titled Beams of Light. Everything I reference in this episode can be found there. Here's an excerpt from that chapter and a preview of what's to come. "I stayed at the radio shop," said the senior airman. A little while later, it had to be past 12:30 since he had to pick up the part first, he called, really excited, and told me that he had just seen another UFO. It had followed the runway, which runs more or less east and west, then it turned again, and flew directly over the weapons storage area. He said it came right at the tower and was so low that he and the guard hit the deck. He said it hovered nearby for a few seconds. He couldn't say how long, then it slowly moved off over the trees. Without further ado, please enjoy this wide-ranging, deep-diving episode on the Rendlesham Forest incident. Let's get into it. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another solo episode of The Zach Show. And this time we are talking about a UFO incident, specifically the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident that took place in England. And there are multiple aspects of this UFO incident. The most talked about elements of this incident are what actually happened in the forest. And today, I want to take a deeper dive into what happened specifically in the weapons storage facility at Rendlesham, because this is a less prophesized, a less talked about part of this incident in particular. And what brought this incident to my attention is the chapter in UFOs and Nukes, the book called UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings. And the chapter that he lays all of this out is the Beams of Light. It is called the Beams of Light chapter. If you have the book or you're going to read it, you want to go through it, all of this is laid out in Beams of Light and UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings. And so before we get into the incident with Rendlesham Forest and the nuclear weapons storage facility, UAP, UFO activity going on with that, I wanted to lay out why I'm doing this episode. Why did I choose this topic? And number one is the question of, are we alone in the universe? It's one of the most, if not the most fascinating question that I often think about, whether I'm sober going for a morning walk during the day and the sun is out and the birds are chirping and I'm looking up at the sky and, I can see the sun, and then I start to think about like how fucking far away the sun is, and it's the closest star to the earth. And this is one of billions of stars, trillions of galaxies, solar systems. And then I also think about it when I'm, not sober and I'm high as fuck, and maybe I'm walking around, having just drank a little bit of CBD, THC, concoction tincture now that it's legal in New York. Maybe I'm sipping on that little weed can and I'm starting to look around. I hear the birds chirping. I see the sun, and then all of a sudden that sun turns into night, and then I see the stars. And then I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on? What is the answer? Because there is going to be no definitive answer, but what is out there? Who is out there? And I can't not, I don't see as a human being he's talking to you, whoever's happening to stumble into this universe and listen to this episode. I can't imagine you not thinking about that and giving it deep thought, so much to the point where you start to go, holy shit, this is actually anxiety provoking, thinking about how small the planet Earth is, how small this little space of the universe is that we occupy, and the possibilities out there of different life. And the second question that, number one, are we alone in the universe? And number two, the second, most talked about, or I guess the topic that seems most mysterious that everyone is trying to figure out the answer to is, how does the human mind work? How does consciousness work? And when you get into UFOs and UAPs, and you get into all the experiences that people have, whether it's seeing craft or experiencing abduction, the work of John Mack, and looking into whatever the source of this stuff is, that the way that people experience it in their mind, the way that, someone can have a one-on-one experience with a craft or a craft that apparently exposes itself to thousands of people, like in the Phoenix Lights situation, you start to see how the human mind interacts with these sort of phenomena, and how we take it in, how we experience it, how we process it. And I think those two questions, are we alone in the universe and how does the human mind work, really get folded in to the UFO topic. So this is what intrigued me about talking about UFO, having a UFO focused podcast, which is not going to be the first one, is not going to be the last one. And then second, why am I talking about this experience? Why am I talking about this event, the Rendlesham event in particular? 95% of UFO, UAP reports are bullshit. It's easy to get tied into something that is a complete fucking crock of shit, especially when you go down the rabbit hole and you look at, AI and how easy it is to fake something, and like all the shit that goes into identifying that, which I'm not an expert in. But Robert Hastings, the author of UFOs and Nukes and the author of this chapter, Beams of Light, that we're going to go through, is a trusted UAP researcher. He has a great reputation in the community. He's investigated UFO nuclear incidents for over 3 decades. He worked at the Maelstrom Air Force Base, so he has military experience. He has experience working, in the sort of environments of which this incident occurred. And I wanted to make sure, if I'm going to do a deep dive, I didn't want it to be, a complete fucking waste of time, complete fucking bullshit, where and not in the sense that because I'm going through this event means that the source behind the craft is alien and it's definitely extraterrestrial. No, that's not what I mean. I just mean that I want to spend this time investigating something that's worth investigating, regardless of what the source of this ends up being, if we ever find out what was behind the Rendlesham incident. And lastly, before we get into the specifics of the chapter, just remember, I am a complete fucking idiot. I am a non-specialist podcaster. I interview music artists. I record conversations with athletes, with authors, with directors, comedians. I'm a non-specialist, so I don't consider myself an expert. I barely consider myself an expert in the art of podcasting, which I've been doing for 6 years. I'm not an expert in any one field in particular, so I am an idiot going through the work of an expert. So keep that in mind. I'm just a guy exploring work. And we're going to go on this adventure together. So take everything I say with 1,000 grains of salt. Put on your goddamn tinfoil hats. Take a sip of ayahuasca and let's get the fuck into this. So, intro to the Rendlesham Forest incident. This is how Robert Hastings sets it up. Come on this journey with me. One of the most spectacular UFO cases of all time involved a series of incidents, on 2 or more nights. So it involved a series of incidents on 2 or more nights at 2 neighboring Anglo-American air bases in Suffolk, England, in December 1980. The bases, RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge, were separated by a small forest. Consequently, the multiple UFO events which occurred there are collectively known as the Bentwaters-Woodbridge-Rendlesham Forest case. Say that for it. Bentwaters-Woodbridge-Rendlesham Forest case. Bentwaters-Woodbridge. That's the language the aliens were speaking when they were Rendlesham, and we are here to anally probe. Oh, yeah. However, most people nowadays simply refer to it as Bentwaters or the quote Rendlesham Forest incident. With the exception of the alleged 1947 recovery of a crashed alien spaceship at Roswell, New Mexico, the intriguing events at Bentwaters have arguably received more media coverage in recent years than any other UFO incident. While most of the publicity has focused on reports of a landed UFO in Rendlesham Forest, an equally important aspect of the story has generally been overlooked. Another UFO was apparently observed hovering near the Bentwaters weapons storage area, a nuclear weapons storage area containing tactical nukes. And reportedly, this UFO directed laser-like beams of light down into it, down into the nuclear storage area. Now imagine you're a nuclear weapons controller and you're working at the base, you're chatting amongst the other nuclear nerds, and you say, you know what, I'm going to go on break, I'm going to go, rip a cigarette. I don't know if you could rip a cig. Can you rip cigs at a nuclear base? Is it like when you're working at an oil place or like a gas station that can you cause a nuclear disaster with a cigarette? I don't know, but let's just say this is back in 1980. They were fucking just chiefing Marlboros on break, watching the nukes, taking a coffee break, and you're chilling, you're chatting. You and Greg are talking about, how just sex isn't the same anymore. You've been married for 20 years to both your wives, and it's hard to find your wife sexy. And when playboys are just out and about and you can just look at whatever naked female form you want, it's hard to get that blood rushing to the cock when you've been married for that long. And then Greg turns around and he says, well, we haven't even found porn yet. We haven't even found online porn yet. And you say, Greg, wait, what's online? It's 1980. And he says, don't worry, your kids will find out about that and they'll start jerking off at 9 years old and develop a crippling porn addiction in the future. But just focus on this right now. Let's just finish the cigarette and drink our coffees. And then you're fucking, you're chiefing on that cig. You put it out. You take that last sip of coffee and you turn around, you say, all right, Greg, I'll see you back in the town. What the you just say, zzz, 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 just lasers. Lasers, a spaceship shooting lasers at nukes. What is going through your, I could not imagine, you're just fucking, you putting out a cigarette. All right, Greg, I'll see you up there. Zzz, what the how do you even respond to that? I'm assuming that 99.9999% of a nuclear what do you call it? Like an operations job or like the watcher of nukes. If you're not actually making the nukes and you're just like on guard, I assume that 99.99999% of that job is just boring as shit. You know, once every 40 years, there's a nuclear scare with Russia or whoever. But then other than that, you're just basically making sure the nukes are not exploding. You're just walking around going, oh, the no mushroom cloud. All right, good. And that's an extreme oversimplification. And I'm sure I'm going to get some messages from nuclear engineers that are like, my job's hard as fuck. You have no idea. And you're probably right. You're definitely right, because I'm not one. But I'm just imagining my dumbass being at a nuclear facility, just ripping cigs, drinking on a break, sipping some black roast, and then boom, I see fucking lasers just beaming into the nuke. I'm pretty sure I would just, at that point, think that humanity's over. I might as well finish the pack and just watch the fucking UFO mushroom cloud go into the air, whatever this craft is that's shooting laser beams at the facility. And keep in mind, 1980, we're talking the Cold War is hot at this point. We're in the hot part of the Cold. We're going back and forth with Russia. Like, things are pretty fucking heated between the United States and the Soviet Union in 1980. And Star Wars is out. I think Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980. So we're in like full swing of Star Wars, the Cold War. If I see a UFO shooting laser beams in 1980, that's a mind fuck. Like, I'm thinking the Soviet Union just teamed up with space aliens from Star Wars to take out America. I don't know what the fuck is going through my mind, but it's also like 1980 must have been a crazy cultural moment to experience something like that, because this is before deep fakes. This is like, now there's fucking like you hear about certain craft and stuff and you're like, it's probably just the government testing shit out. I'm not saying that's what all of it is, but like some of the shit you see on YouTube is so fucking wild. This is before any of that. This is before technology, and you're in the middle of the Cold War with like just a pop cultural moment of the, space aliens fucking, coming out in movies. Like, your brain has to be just fucking like inseminated with the formula to imagine crazy shit. Like, it's just brewing in the back of your head in 1980. There's the pressure from the war. There's like the burst of these fucking $100 million movies. The imaginations are going wild with space and aliens and like these universal light year pictures. You have to be fucking just wiling out of your mind if you see something like that, let alone like the actual event of a craft shooting lasers into a nuclear facility. So that is how Robert Hastings opens up the chapter of beams of light of the Rendlesham Forest incident. And as he sets up, he says, a lot of people talk about the actual forest, like the UFO landing in the forest, but we're going to focus on the weapons storage area. Before we get into the weapons storage area, the nuclear aspect, this is a summary of the event, which I think sort of helps you like imagine what was going on. From Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. He was the base commander at Rendlesham, and Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt writes out this summary of what happened over the Rendlesham Forest incident. So this is the summary that Robert Hastings includes in his book. Before we get into the actual nuclear weapons storage aspect, here's like an overview of the entire incident. So Colonel Halt writes, early in the morning of December 27th, 1980, approximately 0300 L, which I'm assuming is 3 a.m., two USAF, U.S. Air Force Security Police patrolmen saw unusual lights outside the back gate at RAF Woodbridge. Thinking an aircraft might have crashed or been forced down, they called for permission to go outside the gate to investigate. The on-duty flight chief responded and allowed 3 patrolmen to proceed on foot. The individuals reported seeing a strange glowing object in the forest. The object was described as being metallic in appearance and triangular in shape, approximately 2 or 3 meters across the base and approximately 2 meters high. It illuminated the entire forest with a white light. The object itself had a pulsing red light on top and a bank of blue lights underneath. Sounds like a UFO cop car a little bit, patrolling the universe, red lights and blue lights. The object was hovering or on legs. As the patrolman approached the object, it maneuvered through the trees and disappeared. At this time, the animals on a farm nearby went into a frenzy. The object was briefly sighted approximately an hour later near the back gate. We got lights beaming off. We got a metallic craft. We got red light, blue lights. We got legs. We got hovering, not sure which. Animals are going fucking buck wild at the farm close by. Animals making noise is never a good sign. Like, anytime I see a dog bark at someone or something in a movie, I go, there's evil afoot. There's some stranger danger going on in these parts. Everything could be fine. I could be in the middle of a flowery meadow just huffing dandelion, and all of a sudden I see a dog barking at a tree. I'm like, that's a fucking evil tree right there. Why is that dog fucking barking at that evil ass tree in the middle of my dandelion meadow? There must be some sort of dark spiritual force among us, and I don't like it. So that's what I like. Anytime, when you see a dog bark, even in the movies, like, you see a dog bark at someone in a movie, and you're just like, oh yeah, that person's evil. Like a dog, like animals not liking something because they're seen as so pure. They're seen as animals are sort of like this alarm bell for darkness. That if an animal is a dog will not stop or the dog is racist. That's could be, maybe it had a black owner that beat the shit out of it, and now every time you bring it outside above a certain street, it won't stop barking in the city. But other than that situation, if a dog is just relentlessly barking or fucking horse is going buck wild, I just assume like that there's something whack that's about to attack this site for a fact. And apparently there's on-duty flight chiefs that were responding to this incident. So you have the craft that is seen, and then it says the on-duty flight chiefs responded and allowed 3 patrolmen to proceed on foot. Now, sending in 3 guys on foot to inspect a glowing, pulsating craft is wild. They're either going to incinerate instantly, or incinerate after they scream. Those are the only 2 options. Now, I don't know what happened to these patrolmen. I assume we'll find out at some point in the report. But for you to be like the base leader and you see a fucking craft come down and start shooting lasers and fucking beams of light, and then there are 3 fucking probably teenagers with AR-15s that you're just like, yeah, go check it out. And to think that they're going to be like, yeah, we'll totally be in control of this fucking weird ass craft shooting lasers at our nuclear base. Think again, because they're not coming back. If I was in that patrolman group and my leader said, hey, go check out that craft, I would look at the other 2 guys and go, we're dying, right? This is it. Why even take our guns? What are we going to do? Shoot at the fucking UFO that is just burning lasers through our base? This is it. The Grim Reaper is upon us, and we are walking into it. So it's it's wild to send to see a craft and be like, yeah, go check that out. Fucking go see if it's like a fucking Honda or Chevy, see what make it is, model, get back to us, file a report. Like, no, you're going to get fucking, it's a lose-lose situation. The overview, the summary from Colonel Charles Halt continues. He writes, the next day, the day after the incident, 3 depressions, 11 half inches deep. I can't, it's 11-2 inches deep. So it's either 11/2 or 11 inches deep, and maybe I copy and pasted it wrong, but there's 3 depressions, 11 something inches deep and 7 inches in diameter, were found where the object had been sighted on the ground. So there's tracks, depressions in the ground. The following night, December 29th, 1980, the area was checked for radiation. Beta gamma readings of 0.1 milliroentgens were recorded at peak readings in the 3 depressions and near the center of the triangle formed by the 3 depressions. A nearby tree had 0.05 to 0.07 milliroentgens readings on the side of the tree toward the depression. Later in the night, a red sun-like light was seen through the trees. It moved about and pulsed. At one point, it appeared to throw off glowing particles and then broke into 5 separate white objects and then disappeared. So you have a craft and it just fucking breaks into 5 different pieces and then flies off. Immediately thereafter, 3 star-like objects were noticed in the sky, 2 objects to the north and 1 to the south, all of which were 10 degrees off the horizon. The objects moved rapidly in sharp angular movements and displayed red, green, and blue lights. So now we're kind of like Cop Christmas, throwing in the green in there. A little bit of variation. The objects to the north appeared to be elliptical through an 8 to 12 power lens. They then turned into full circles. The objects in the north remained in the sky for an hour or more. The object in the south was visible for 2 or 3 hours and beamed down a stream of light from time to time. Numerous individuals, including the undersigned, so I guess people who affirmed this explanation of the incident, signed underneath this, those individuals also witnessed the activities described. So to go back to the radiation readings, and I described for any nose picking, if you're watching the video, or sniffling, it is, I'm recording this in winter in New York. My skin is dry. I get some extra, I'm waking up with extra snot in the morning. I feel, a little more sniffly during these months. I wish it was from cocaine. That would be cool if my body was just producing that internally, but it is from extra sniffliness, so I apologize for that. But for the nuclear readings, I don't know if this is high or not. I tried looking up, is 0.05, 0.07 milliroentgens high? Is that indicative of a nuclear radioactive source being nearby? I couldn't get a straight answer on that, but I also assume that at a nuclear base, there would be some sort of reading. I don't think you can completely contain radiation at a nuclear base. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems like if you're storing nuclear weapons, there'd be some sort of leak through whatever, cement capsule or enclosure that you were keeping the weapons in. But I don't know. Like I said, I'm an idiot going through this. I'm just exploring. We're going on an adventure together. I feel like when it describes the objects, the craft, the 3 star-like objects noticed in the sky that were seen in the north, 1 to the south, 10 degrees off the horizon, the objects moved rapidly in sharp angular movements, displayed these lights, sort of kind of reminds you of like a jaded, violent, beautiful light display in the sky. If you saw this, you might think it was some sort of light show by the description. And when I hear a lot of UFO sightings described, it does sound like it's almost a courtship mating dance display. Like the the objects are almost dancing in the sky. They're moving in a sequence, in a pattern. And specifically, this is what it sounds like here. It's almost like a firework breaking apart when it says there's one light and then 5 separate white objects broke apart from that light and then disappeared and then came back on the horizon, and they were moving in sharp angular movements like that. You know, if you could see beyond the fact that it's an unknown craft, it's an anomalous presence, on its face, that seems like a pretty cool display. Like, it's like dancing somehow. It's like this craft dancing in the sky. And the first thing I thought of when I was reading this description is I was living in Panama for a little bit last year, and there's a bird that does, I forget what the bird's called, but it dances on the forest floor. And it makes a space. It literally makes a circle on the jungle floor, more in Panama, with all the type of environment there. This bird dances on the jungle floor, and it makes these snapping noises with its wings. And it's like, I don't know if you could hear that on the microphone, but it makes like, it dances and it's doing moves. It's like fucking spinning, moonwalking on the forest floor. It's hard to see. I saw a split second of it once when we were walking through part of this like jungle conservatory. But it like does this thing where it's moving the bird. It moves rapidly on the forest floor, and it goes back and forth and up and down, and it's making noises. There's no lights, obviously, because it's a fucking bird, but it's doing this extravagant display to assert dominance, to find a mate. And obviously that's it's not what is going on here. At least in this incident, I don't think there was any mating or anal probing of any kind, but it is like a dancing, very sort of like celebratory, holiday-like display. Like, it's ornamental. That was the word. I was like, it's an ornamental pattern. It seems like what's going on here based on the description. And we also assume that UFOs, aliens, like, they're waiting to present themselves fully, to communicate with us. That, one day, I just watched Mars Attacks, where, one day the alien's gonna come down and fucking meet with our president. And in that movie, shit hits the fan. But, a lot of people think there's gonna be some official meeting that's gonna symbolize the communication between our species and whatever other species comes into contact with us. And then, like, these craft, whatever's appearing to these military pilots, whatever's appearing to people who witness these events, these are not like attempts at communication. These are just like sort of the UFOs showing their presence. But what if the presentation and the movement of the crafts is a form of communication, like a courtship dance, in the sense that this is their language or part of their language, that what is happening with these craft is actually some sort of symbol that can directly translate into an emotion or a topic, just something that's trying to be communicated to us that maybe we can't pick up on. And this is just, could be total bullshit. It's just a theory that, like, the revelation of the crafts themselves could be part of their language and communication, that it's not an accident the way these things are moving or appearing to us. There's a deeper meaning to it on a communicatory level. So that is what happened at Rendlesham. That is the overall incident. Now, this is the secondhand testimony of a radio communication specialist at Bentwater Nuclear Weapons Storage Facility. So now we're getting into the thing that's much less talked about, which is the craft appearing near the nuclear weapons storage facility, not just going into the forest, but actually appearing near tactical nukes. This is secondhand testimony from a radio communication specialist. We will get into firsthand testimony that Robert Hastings goes through in this chapter, but this first is from Carl Thompson Jr., a radio communication specialist. So Hastings writes, shortly after I spoke with Colonel Halt, who's Colonel Charles Halt, the base commander who wrote that summary, Colonel Charles Halt forwarded 2 emails he had received from a former radio communication specialist at Bentwaters, Carl Thompson Jr., who told Halt that he had indirect knowledge of the UFO incidents at the Bentwater weapons storage area. Yes, incidents, plural. That there had been more than one sighting at the WSA was news to me, so I quickly called Thompson. This is Hastings talking. Hastings says, this is what Thompson told me at the time. So Carl Thompson Jr. says, I was a senior airman with the 2164th Communications Squadron. I was a radio relay repairman. On the first night, Christmas night, if I'm not mistaken, I was at the weapons storage area working on a piece of equipment in the security tower, troubleshooting it. I think it was a motion detection component used for the security of the weapons. At midnight, the guy who was going to relieve me, X, well, call him. It's in the book, it just has ... I just replaced it X podcast wise because I don't know how to say dashes in podcast form. So we'll just call the unnamed guy X. He says, at midnight, the guy who was going to relieve me, X, called and said that he would come out to the area. So I went back to the wideband radio shop and finished up some paperwork. Now, I don't remember how much later it was, but he called me at the shop and said, we just saw a UFO. He meant himself and the security guards. He was in the security tower cab at the time he called. So this is X saying, we just saw a UFO. You could plainly tell he was excited and maybe kind of anxious. He sounded matter-of-fact, but also kind of half scared. I asked, what did it look like? He said it was so bright that you couldn't look directly at it. So I didn't get any details about its shape, how large it was, any of that. It was just a really bright light. He said it was hovering there for just a few seconds. Then it went toward Woodbridge. So maybe that would be a southwesterly direction. So then I asked X, did everybody see it? He said that everyone had. Then he asked me, how am I going to report this? I said, and this is Thompson Jr. talking. He says, no, they're not going to report it. So X asked Thompson Jr., is anyone else going to report it? And then Thompson Jr. says, no, they're not going to report it. So I said, how are you going to look if the others who are right there in the area aren't going to report it? You're going to be on your own. If it were me, I would let it go. I was the ranking person on that night, so I told him I would advise against it. But it's up to you. So X sees this thing. Carl Thompson Jr., who's the senior airman on patrol that night, X comes to him and says, I've seen a fucking UFO, so have other guys. Should I report it? This guy, he's not sure what to do. X is not sure if he's going to report it. Then Carl Thompson Jr. says, how are you going to look if the others who are right there in the area aren't going to report it? What if you, X, report it, and then, YZ, whoever else is there, doesn't report it? How is that going to make you look? You're going to be on your own. Carl Thompson Jr. says, if it were me, I would let it go. Don't report this shit. They're going to think you're crazy. Thompson Jr. says, I was the ranking person on that night, so I told him I would advise against reporting it, but it's up to you. I can only imagine the dichotomy of the insane pressure to keep your job versus wanting to report honestly. about the wild shit that you saw. You just saw a UFO. You saw a craft, whatever the source is. You saw something that is not supposed to be at a nuclear base. And in your mind, and again, this is back in 1980. This is before the recent whistleblower protection laws. This is before the congressional UFO hearings. You are at a nuclear base, which, I'm assuming everything is so siloed, no pun intended, but like your work is not being shared with other people in the Air Force. It's only on a need to know basis. So you don't know really what other people have seen. This is before YouTube. This is before like people were coming out, at least like before the stigma was where it is today. Like the stigma, if the stigma is at like a 5 out of 10 today, it was at a fucking like 12 out of 10 back in 1980. You don't know what other people have seen. You don't know. You're probably questioning your own sanity. You're probably trying to rationalize with yourself. Like maybe I was, having a panic attack. Maybe I fucking, I don't know, someone spiked my coffee. Someone put LSD in my cigarette. Maybe I fucking, maybe I didn't actually see what I see. I can't imagine that the immense, just overwhelming pressure that you feel to say, no, this is what I saw. I'm a nuclear patrolman. I would not have this job if I was psychiatrically disinclined to sanity. I have proven, I'm sure through rigorous testing, that I can handle being around nukes. There's no way the fucking government would not test people in a rigorous manner to let them on the space. So like you already know your sound of mind. And now you see this shit and everyone else is like, yeah, I'm not going to say shit. Like we saw it too, but if you want to report it, you fucking go ahead. You be the loony person who, you be UFO Chad on the base. Like fucking everyone will be like, oh yeah, that's Chad. Like he's going fucking crazy. I'm not taking that shit on. So I'm sure that happened a lot, especially back in the day. Again, before all of these whistleblower protections, before people were testifying in front of Congress, before YouTube, before fucking like BBC. Well, like there was no open source platform where you could just go to and tell your story and not have to worry about being fired or being labeled as fucking crazy. And I've spoken to other people in the military about these topics on the podcast, and they often say that the military will tell you, come forward with anything, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the stigma. Like we'll treat you fairly. Just tell us what you saw. And then you'll report it. And then boom, you get like a fucking psychological tick on your rap sheet. Like it gets marked down and like, then, maybe you're demoted or maybe like you're sent to a trauma specialist or, you're sent to a psychologist and like they try to label you to sort of give you like the red, like the scarlet letter, like the people will, you then become the thing that you saw to the military. They can't see past that. You're just this damaged product to them, even though the military is saying like, don't worry, like there's no stigma, come forward. And then you're honest and then boom, you get fucking marked for, getting shipped off to wherever. So yeah, I can only imagine how insane that pressure is. Thompson Jr. then goes on. Again, this is the secondhand testimony of the radio communications specialist, Carl Thompson Jr. He then goes on to say, when I saw X later that night, he had to order a part for the tower. So we crossed paths. He told me he decided not to report the incident. At the time, we didn't know that the other base was involved. We had no idea that there had been some security police hunting it down or whatever in the woods. I guess it was 2 nights later. The part for the equipment in the tower came in. We got notified about that just as X was coming off shift at midnight, so he said he would go out and install it. I stayed at the radio shop. A little while later, it had to be past 12:30 since he had to pick up the part first. He called, really excited, and told me that he had just seen another UFO. It had followed the runway, which runs more or less east and west. Then it turned, and then it turned again and flew directly over the weapons storage area. He said it came right at the tower and was so low that he and the guard hit the deck. It was so low that he and the guard hit the deck. He said it hovered nearby for a few seconds and he couldn't say how long. Then it slowly moved off over the trees. He said it was just above them, but then it dropped down into the trees. He didn't see it come back up. So that's when he called me on the landline. He said he heard a bunch of chatter on the radio tower. The guard was there talking to someone and said the security police were going to have to report it this time because it went down into the woods. The next time that I saw X, he told me he had to file a report along with the security police at their headquarters. It was only maybe 300 yards from the weapons storage area. So you have this UFO craft coming down 300 yards next to these tactical nukes, next to this nuclear weapons storage facility, so fucking low that they were in the tower and then dropped down to the ground when this craft flew over their head, apparently. He says, so low, I had to hit the deck. Now, I don't not believe that. Like, if you say it's so low, I had to hit the deck, you know, I'm sure there was some nerves going on there. Some, you know, a guy's afraid. You see a fucking craft and you hit the deck. But to me, this does sound a little bit like a guy who saw the UFO get close, spazzed out, and was like, oh my. And then he tried to play it off like he hit the deck like a Navy SEAL and dropped to all fours. Like he was just in the tower, saw the fucking UFO come overhead, spilled coffee on himself, fucking fell backwards, hit the deck, was like, oh, fuck. And then he saw everyone else was also freaking out. So he just like turned over onto all fours and started fucking just right into a bear crawl, hoping that no one else saw. And then once the incident was over, everyone was like, Steve, we saw you trip on yourself. We saw you yell mommy and then fall backwards onto your ass and then look at us. We made eye contact and then you started bear crawling like you did that on purpose. You did not hit the deck. You yelled for your mother and then fell backwards on the control tower and then tried to play it off like you're a special operations officer just fucking crawling through the fields of Iraq. We saw you, Steve. Don't try to fucking play that shit off like you were smooth about it. You freaked out. You're fucking freak out Steve now. That's what it sounds like to me. But, you know, this craft came overhead. They hit the deck. Shit went crazy. Shit was going wild. Thompson Jr. says later on, it seems like a week later or so, Thompson Jr. says he had been called by our squadron commander, Major Casa, and told to report for a briefing. So I'm assuming this is X. X was called by the squadron commander, Major Casa, and told to report for a briefing. He was gone most of the afternoon, but when he came back, he was really agitated. X was really agitated. I asked him, what's up? He said, we're not to speak about the UFO. Then he said, really angry, I know what I saw. He said that during the briefing, someone, he assumed it was the Office of Special Investigations, told everyone that that night they hadn't seen anything. I think that upset X more than anything. They called all of the police liars and all that. He said they told us we did not see it and we're never to speak of it. He was really upset. He said the OSI agents had talked to them as a group and then talked to them individually. You know, went over their statements with them. He said they told him he was a liar and that he would never have a career and all that, threatening him. But he told me that he couldn't get into details. We never talked about it again. Imagine dodging a UFO and then some dude in a black suit comes into the base and goes, yeah, you didn't see that. I would kick him in the fucking nuts. I would be, oh, I didn't see that? You didn't feel that? You didn't feel that, me just kicking you right in the fucking ball bag? Don't tell me what I saw or what I didn't see. You know, if you're gonna, don't tell me I didn't see it. Come in and tell me, hey, we know what you saw. We know what you're saying you saw. You can't fucking talk about it. Then I'd be like, all right, fine. Tell me where to sign. I work for the government. I signed up for this shit. But don't come in and be like, you didn't see that. You're fucking, you didn't see shit, you fucking liar. Don't tell me that. I will say though that being the guy in, you know, special investigations, whether it's like OSI or CIA, being that guy that goes around all day to people who see crazy shit, like this guy X at the base, being this guy, you know, in the black suit that goes around all day, people seeing wild shit, and then telling them you didn't see that, sounds like the worst fucking job in the world. Like, imagine making it through the CIA training program and you're all excited. You're you know, first day at work, you think you're going fucking covert operations, Middle East, you're gonna bust up some terrorists, and your boss is like, hey Tim, so now that you're an official CIA agent, your job is gonna be going around to everyone who claims that they saw a UFO, and you tell them that they didn't see shit. So yeah, you're going to Bob's farm today. Something sliced open all of his cows, abducted his wife. She hasn't been seen since Thursday. His car teleported to a different state. But you're going to go to Bob's farm and just be like, you know, all that shit that you saw, you didn't. So go do that. I would be like, this is what I fucking joined the CIA for, to just go visit people and fucking be like, yeah, you didn't see shit, bitch. You didn't see a fucking craft. That was a balloon. That was, you saw a guy committing suicide from the clouds. He was jumping from the clouds. That's the thing that you saw in the air. It was not a UFO. It was, you know, someone was having a birthday party and they accidentally released a giraffe balloon, and you saw the giraffe and the hippo get tangled, and they were sort of fucking like metallic balloons in the sky, just back and forth, just fucking the shit out of each other. And you saw that and were like, oh my God, it's a UFO. That's what you saw. That's what you saw. That's the worst job in the world, because you have people that have just had an existential experience, that they're in their mind, you know, regardless of what the source is, they're thinking they just saw fucking extraterrestrial life, possibly. They're thinking they just saw something from another goddamn world, and your job is to go in and be like, no, you didn't. You didn't see shit. Now sign here before we ruin your goddamn life. Like, I also do, in a weird way, feel for those guys in these, you know, black site agencies that just go around all day and are like, yeah, I just have to go to people who just had the craziest experience of their life and call them liars. That's also a shitty thing to have to do. So I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying, you know, there's two sides to this. You can feel bad for both sides. And on that note, I'm going to take a quick piss, get some more water, maybe blow my nose, and then we're going to come back for some firsthand testimony from this incident, from the Rendlesham incident, specifically the nuclear storage unit. We will be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, and this is firsthand testimony from a guy named Rick Bobo. I know that name sounds made up, or, you know, maybe it's a guy's porn name, Rick Bobo. I'm gonna fucking Bobo those cheeks, you know what I'm talking about? Fucking dribbling back and forth, getting those Bobo butt cheeks, you know what I'm... Oh, whoa, there's a UFO. So that could be a made-up name. It's not. It's legit. It's in the book. And this guy worked at the radio tower at Bentwater. This is a first-hand testimonial account, and this is Bobo talking to Hastings. This is Again, this is all coming from the chapter Beams of Light in UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings. And this is Bobo interacting with Robert Hastings. So Bobo says, as you probably know, the night I saw the UFOs, I was in the tower at the Bentwaters weapons storage area. The main object hovered out there for a long, long time. It never really moved anywhere else. It was kind of hard to see, but it was slightly oblong, I guess, and I seem to recall it had a bluish and reddish light on it. Again, so the blue and red lights, that is consistent. Not really lights like aircraft lights, like just a tint. It wasn't a star or a planet, and it wasn't a lighthouse as some people claim. That would be a crazy fucking lighthouse. Just, one of those lighthouses that can detach from the ground and just fucking shoot up in the air and then break apart into 5 pieces. Those classic lighthouses I'm talking about in Montauk. You've ever been out to Eastern Long Island? Come on. Those lighthouses that just fucking shoot off and disappear into the sky. Hastings says to Bobo, if you held a dime at arm's length, was it larger than that? Bobo says, oh yeah. It was larger than that. I would say it was, maybe as large as a $50 coin held out at arm's length. But I don't know how far away it was. It was so dark that night, I could just make out the forest. When the object first caught my eye, it was already stationary. I didn't see it move to where it was, and I didn't see it leave. I never left the tower, and I kept a close eye on the object most of the time, trying to figure out what it was and what it might do next. Hastings says, did you observe anything resembling beams of light coming down from the object at any time? Bobo says no, not beams of light. But after it was hanging there for a long while, I saw things shooting off of it, like really, really fast, like little sparks or something. Maybe 4 or 5 of them, little pieces of light, all leaving within a minute of one another. Like they were getting out of there. I hate to say it, but they looked like little ships, like drones maybe, but I don't know. They were shooting off in all directions, but up into the sky, not down to the ground. Right after that, the big object just disappeared. I was watching it, at least I thought I was, but it was just gone. I don't know what happened to it. So if this was a lighthouse, it was the weirdest fucking lighthouse I've ever seen. This, again, these guys are working at a nuclear weapons storage facility with, I assume, some live hair trigger tactical nukes there, along with another arsenal that may not be live, but it's a fucking nuclear storage facility. You're not hiring people who are duds. You're not hiring idiots like myself who, talk into a microphone for a living. You're hiring people who fucking know their shit, that they're fucking calm, they're stern. They're the type of people who aren't going to freak the fuck out if a nuke has to be launched. That's the type of demeanor of a person that you're talking about here. So the fact that this guy is just like sitting there telling Robert Hastings, again, Robert Hastings also has experience working at Malmstrom Air Force Base, so he's been through this type of shit. He's sitting there with guys that are like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I was sitting there and I saw lights and they broke apart, and then maybe they were drones, maybe they weren't, and then it just fucking shot off and disappeared. I'm just telling you what I saw. So I think this extra level of credibility comes from the fact that these are vetted psychologically sound military guys. And I apologize for the phlegm there. So that was Rick Bobo. This is another firsthand witness, J.D. Burris, who was an Air Force security policeman. So Hastings writes out an interview where it's not question and answer style, like with Rick Bobo, but Hastings just kind of like writes it out as it happens. So this is Burris talking to Robert Hastings. So Burris is an Air Force security policeman that was at the Rendlesham base and the nuclear weapons storage facility. So Hastings writes, at this point in the interview, Burris asked me what I knew about the weapons kept at the weapons storage area at Rendlesham. In response, I summarized what I had been told by various sources over the years. The bunkers held tactical nuclear bombs. 2 had allegedly been removed after the UFO incident and shipped back to the U.S. for inspection. At that point, Burris interrupted me and finished my sentence. On a C-5A Galaxy cargo aircraft. So Robert Hastings says, yeah, I heard about this site. 2 nukes were shipped back for nuclear inspection. And then fucking Burris is just like, yeah, they were shipped back on a C-5A Galaxy aircraft. Burris then confirmed that he knew about weapons being flown to the States shortly after the UFO-related events at the twin bases. Burris said, quote, about a week, maybe 2 after the second incident in the woods, a C-5A flew in. It got special security, top echelon security. Various procedures were implemented that were only put in place for that one aircraft. I asked Burris, so the only time those procedures were put in place was during the transfer of nuclear weapons. He heaved and sighed and he said, I don't really want to answer that, but yes, the answer is yes. So Hastings says, so the only time those procedures were put in place was during the transfer of nuclear weapons. Burris says, I don't want to answer that, but yes. We knew the aircraft was coming, and this is Burris talking. We knew the aircraft was coming, and before it arrived, we established a security perimeter around the area where it would park, posted 2 guards, and then they were there until the aircraft left the next day. The morning it arrived, there was a weapons movement from the weapons storage area to the aircraft, after which it took off. We were then briefed about it. We were told it was a, quote, routine transfer back to the States. Well, maybe so, but it was the only weapons transfer I saw during my 3 years at the base. So sounds highly unusual. But if you've been following, UFO incidents, and I consider myself, a basic observer of, not a firsthand observer, but like listen to podcasts. I've heard people describe their experiences with UFOs, people in the military, documentarians, and there's a lot of times where UFO will come visit a country. There's a reported sighting. And then the U.S. military comes in and sweeps up after a lot of these incidents. So again, Rendlesham is in England. And so what the fuck is the U.S. military coming in, taking 2 nukes from this base in England? Because I don't think that Rendlesham is a U.S. operations base. I could be wrong about that, but you would think that it would be the British Navy or British Special Operations that would come in and take these nukes to inspect them. Also in Virginia, in James Fox's documentary, he describes the U.S. military coming in, the Air Force coming in and allegedly surveying the UFO site, and some people say the U.S. Air Force collected bodies or they collected parts in Virginia in that incident in Brazil. But again, you hear a lot where an incident will happen and then the U.S. military, for whatever reason, whatever agreement we have with these countries, if we say like, hey, we're fucking, anytime a UFO comes and there's a downed craft, the U.S. gets to collect the technology. Otherwise, we're not giving you money anymore. Maybe there's some sort of agreement going on there, but who the fuck knows? But it's just something that I notice happens pretty often after these incidents. Is like the U.S. Air Force is just like, yeah, we'll come in, scoop that up, and be out of your way. And you're just like, what? Why is the U.S. in fucking Brazil, or why are they at the Rendlesham Air Force Base collecting these nukes? And again, the witness, J.D. Burris, says his superiors tried to tell him it was a routine transfer back to the States, but he said it was the only weapons transfer that he saw during his 3 years at the base as a Air Force security policeman. The interview with Burris then continues, where Hastings says, I then asked Burris if he ever attempted to learn more about the incident later on by asking others on the base about it. He said, quote, no, I was trying to forget what I already knew, to tell you the truth. For me, it was okay if you say so. At the time, I didn't believe in UFOs or anything like that. As the interview was winding down, Burris unexpectedly said, later on, around 1982 November at Woodbridge, I had a UFO sighting myself. So Burris is now going into his own UFO sighting. He says, I had been switched over to the night crews earlier that year because I had been promoted to staff sergeant. It was one of those rare occasions when I had base patrol instead of being 50 feet off the ground in the tower at the weapons storage area. Bobby Bergeron and I were headed down to the East Gate, the back of Woodbridge, when we saw 3 sets of what appeared to be ballpark lights hanging over the Rendlesham Forest. The 3 groups were in a straight line, all at the same altitude just above the trees. We weren't scared when we saw that, just curious. So we decided to pick up the sergeant and then hit the Prairie Track Road on the base perimeter to make sure nothing was next to the fence. Just as we turned off the hard pavement, the truck shut down. It wouldn't restart. It wouldn't even click. So Sergeant Y, let's call him. Again, it says Sergeant ... So let's just say Sergeant Y and I walked back to the supervisor's shack to call and have a new truck sent to us. As he and I started walking, we could see that the lights were still there, the lights in the sky. We were closer to them by then, and I could see each group of lights appear to curve around the middle of what seemed like a football-shaped object, not laying on its side, but set on end. There were 3 of those side by side. Before we got to the shack, Bobby had gotten the truck started and came up to us. I asked him, how did you get the truck started? He said he had just turned the key. At that point, we both looked over at the woods and saw the lights over the trees were gone. We didn't report it. So yeah, they see these lights. Obviously Burris feels comfortable telling Hastings this because he's like, I wasn't going to say this, but I had a UFO experience myself. The truck shuts down, which reminds me, and I feel fine naming this person because I recorded a podcast that's out there with my friend Dave Robinson. He told me a similar story. My friend Dave, when he was driving through Virginia, I believe it was, through a remote area of Virginia, and they experienced a craft over their head. It was a large craft. It wasn't just lights. And their truck, their electronics, the car that they were in started going haywire. The electronics shut off. It got wonky. It couldn't record anything. It seems like this is a through line to a lot of UFO encounters where you will see a craft, you'll experience something in the vicinity, and then all of a sudden, like, your fucking, car battery goes off, fucking car shuts down, your phone turns off or doesn't work, your fucking iPad, whatever it is, like electronics and shit, just like, start going funkin' haywire, start going wonky. And it doesn't really tell us what the source is, whether it's of this world, whether it's not of this world, but whatever it is has the power to alter the fields that help electronics function. The radio waves, or fucking Bluetooth, power sources, battery, whatever it is, like, these incidents, these craft, these things, clearly people perceive the interference of their electronic devices and cars, which contain obviously like electronic batteries, and like it's not just gas. There's a bunch of machines and computers in cars. Even back in the day, I'm not sure what year. He says it was 1982. So I don't know what type of machines, what kind of computers were in cars back in 1982. But I assume there was something that would be able to be shut down, whatever mechanism that was. clearly was not working with that car. But that is something that you hear a lot, where it's like people who experience these things have their electronics, their cars, just go haywire. So that is the firsthand account of the people who saw the actual craft, saw these lights by the weapons storage facility. The people that worked at the tactical nuke storage facility during the Rendlesham Forest incident. That is the firsthand account of people, and secondhand account with the first guy, Thompson Jr. So we had Thompson Jr.'s secondhand account. We had Rick Bobo firsthand account, and we had JD Burris firsthand account, who the last two actually saw the craft. Now, this is a firsthand witness interview with the radar controller who was in that night. So this is someone who didn't see the actual craft, but saw the radar, saw the readings. So Hastings goes on to write, he says, aside from the persons reporting UFO incursions at the weapons storage area, I have also interviewed the two USAF controllers, air traffic controllers rather, who were on duty during the period of the UFO activity during late December of 1980. James H. Carey and Ivan Ike R. Barker now belatedly admit to tracking an unidentified target on radar at the Bentwaters Air Traffic Control Tower one night, sometime between December 26, 1980 and January 1st, 1981, as they worked an extended holiday schedule. Jim Carey, not related to the actor Jim Carey, I assume. Maybe there is some crazy relation. But air traffic controller Jim Carey told me, he said, at the time I was a tech sergeant and air traffic controller with the 2164th Communications Squadron. The other controller was named Ike Barker. A major named Y was also there. I think the incident happened between 10 and 12 o'clock, if I remember right. Ike and I usually worked 6 p.m. to midnight, but it was during the holidays when we might have to work 8 or 9 hours. But as I recall, it happened before midnight. What I remember is seeing a very fast object on radar we had in the tower. The scope was variable. It had a zoom as far as its displayed range, between 5 and a 60-mile radius, but I think it was set at a 60-mile radius when the object appeared. It came in from the east, went straight west across the scope, and then disappeared off the left side. It took maybe 4 sweeps. Each sweep was 2 or 3 seconds to cross it entirely. So it covered 120 miles in approximately 8 to 12 seconds. In the 15 years I was an air traffic controller, I'd never seen anything travel across the scope that fast. So let's split the difference. This guy says the craft covered 120 miles in 8 to 12 seconds. Let's say it was 10 seconds. I looked up what 120 miles is in 10 seconds, how fast you would have to be traveling. You would have to be going 43,200 miles per hour to go 120 miles in 10 seconds. There is not, and again, this is 1980. We don't have anything today that we know of that can even come close to that. And not just traveling 43,200 miles an hour, but going back and forth, because the radar controller said, Jim Carey said, this thing disappeared off the left side and took 4 sweeps back across the radar. So like, in fucking, let's say 10 seconds about. So it's stopping, it's accelerating, stopping, and coming back. Even if it was going 43,200 miles an hour, that would be impressive. But the fact that it's also coming to a complete stop and sweeping back across the radar is fucking insane. And again, this is 1980. I looked up the fastest plane that we had back in 1980. And the fastest thing traveled, it's like some Lockheed Martin fighter jet that was going 3,000 something miles per hour at its peak, but it could do that for like less than a few minutes. You can't just, which again, this was only a 10-second incident, but these planes we're still 40,000 miles an hour below what would have been needed to show this type of speed on radar. And even today, we have nothing we know that can approach that in Earth's atmosphere that can be tracked on radar, nothing of human origin. So the radar controller goes on to say, a few seconds later, it came back on the scope, retracing its course west to east at the same speed. Then I think maybe half or 3/4 of the way across, it did an immediate right angle turn and headed south off the bottom of the screen. I mean, it just turned like that instantly. We couldn't believe it. I told Ike, okay, that was not one of ours. Yeah, no shit. Okay, that was not one of ours. So that's all I remember, except for the chatter on the radio. I only saw the unidentified object on radar, but Ike told us that he saw something out the window. I asked him to explain why Barker was able to observe. Oh, this is Hastings now. Hastings says, I asked the controller to explain why Ike Barker was able to observe an aerial object out the window, but he was not. The controller replies, it all happened so fast. Ike said the object was hovering there for just a moment and then it left really fast. So I guess I was looking down at the scope at that time. I believe Ike when he says he saw the UFO, but I just cannot remember seeing it. Hastings says, I then asked Carey if he and Barker had logged or otherwise reported the radar tracking and sighting. He replied, no. We could not say a lot about this because we were air traffic controllers, a very serious job. Our bosses could have us removed at any time if they thought we were acting kind of funny or weird. So to keep our jobs, we never made a big deal of this. We both loved our jobs, and something like this could be cause for removal from the career for good. But considering the other reports of UFO activity at Bentwaters, we thought it was funny that no one ever talked with us about what we saw that night. So again, you see the fear to report out of, being marked as psychologically incompetent, losing your careers. And I wanted to go back to the right angle turns because this is also something that Commander David Fravor said he observed with the Tic Tac UFO incident. I believe that was off the West Coast near San Diego. So the radio controller for Bentwaters, he says that he said it did an immediate right angle turn and headed south off the bottom of the screen. It just turned like that instantly. And David Fravor described the Tic Tac UFO like a ping pong ball bouncing off the wall. So if you think of right angle turns and moving instantly, they're kind of saying the same thing but using different visualizations. Or I won't say the same, but similar, where something's just like it's darting back and forth. There's no really marked acceleration or like turning point. It's just sort of like fucking banging off the wall, going like a ping pong ball. And making right angle turns and going like instant acceleration, it's warming up and then it's like instant turning. So this is something that's been described in multiple UFO incidents by psychologically competent, high-level military pilots. But David Fravor, high-level military pilot, flew the most expensive machines known to man at the time during his career. And then you have a radio controller at a nuclear-armed base who, is sending and receiving calls that have, outcomes that could change the face of the earth, literally. So you need someone who's more than competent to be able to read the radar, handle calls, and, figure out what they're seeing to the best of their ability, like a sane person. So again, like these aren't just fucking, hobos off the street that they're just throwing in these towers. Like these people are vetted at an insanely high level. You don't put someone behind a $500 million aircraft, or you don't put someone in charge of $1 billion nukes if you don't rigorously put them through the absolute ringer of testing. So that comes to the end of the Rendlesham incident. And I want to thank you guys for coming on this journey with me. This is I really enjoy just with these solo episodes, picking a topic, going through them in a, a deep diving manner. And again, this is something that I've been wanting to go through in Robert Hastings' books, UFOs and Nukes, which I bought a while ago. And I marked this chapter to go through. One, because again, what I explained at the beginning, that this incident has been covered a lot, but there's not as much talk about the nuclear weapons storage facility, which is why I wanted to talk about all the shit that went on there. And then two, it's like, this is one of the most important questions we could ask ourselves is are we alone? Are like, what the fuck is out there? And I just want to say, regardless of the source of what was creating these incidents at Rendlesham, at the nuclear weapons storage facility, whether it's U.S. black projects, enemy technology, or alien, these incidents that involve the exploitations of our nuclear weapons demand full investigation and transparency. I know there's an argument about there's an argument against transparency, which I've heard espoused by former military guys on podcasts, where they say it makes the U.S. military look weak to admit to our adversaries that we don't have full autonomy over our airspace, over our nuclear weapons. And I totally I sympathize with that opinion. Obviously, I'm just a fucking idiot. I'm not a war general. I'm not a nuclear expert. I'm not a military commander. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I sympathize with that perspective that you don't want to get. The fact that we don't have information about something is information to our adversaries, because then they know, okay, they do not have these capabilities. Maybe Russia, maybe China has figured some of this shit out. And so they know that we won't be able to defend against these things because we're admitting we don't have autonomy over our airspace, especially, over our nuclear weapons, because there are a lot of nuclear incidents involving UFOs, UAPs that have been reported. I will say, though, the devil's advocate opinion for pro-transparency, the reason why we should be sharing this information, not just with the public, but with our allies, adversaries, just putting it out there into the world, is because we have, in the U.S. alone, thousands of nuclear weapons, many of those on hair trigger alert, which is ready for immediate launch. Like these things, like you press a fucking button and boom, it goes off. Pointed at different countries around the world. We have nuclear weapons on hair trigger alert, pointed in all different directions towards our enemies, adversaries right now in the U.S. What if UAP, UFO activity incites us to launch a nuke at another country, Russia, China, by mistake? What if something in the sky, we don't know what the fuck it is, we mistake it for something that it's not, and boom, we identify it as an adversarial attack, and we launch a nuke by mistake, start a nuclear war, start World War III. We have had a situation like this happen before. We've actually had 6 or 7 incidents, these near nuclear accidents, near nuclear launches happen in history. It's not out of the question that, not even close to being out of the question, that something that we don't understand in our sky could lead to an accidental nuclear launch because we mistake it for something that it's not. And so if the U.S. took the lead and said, hey, let's open source the UAP UFO investigation, let's figure out what the fuck this is so we can work with other countries, allies, adversaries, whoever, so we don't hit the off button for our planet, which would be nuclear war. Let's fucking open book this shit, because you can't go back from launching a nuke. That is something you cannot return from. The world, humanity will never be the same. And if you think that's an exaggeration, that a UFO or UAP, that we could mistake it for something that it's not, maybe we pick it up on our radar as a there's something in the sky and we pick it up accidentally as a nuke that launched from Russia. So we fucking launch nukes at Russia when Russia actually didn't launch anything at us. It was just a UAP, UFO. If we had said, we're seeing these things in our skies, the U.S., we're communicating with other countries. Maybe this sharing of information doesn't happen. We need to start sharing more with other countries to prevent these near nuclear accidents. If you think this is an exaggeration that a nuclear accident, an accidental nuclear launch could occur because of a UFO UAP, if you don't think that could actually happen, let me remind you of the Stanislav Petrov incident. And this is just one. I've had nuclear engineers on the podcast to describe near nuclear accidents. It's actually happened 6 or 7 times throughout history. This is just one incident where shit almost hit the fucking fan. So this is the Stanislav Petrov incident. It occurred on September 26, 1983, so right around the time of Rendlesham, when Soviet officer Stanislav Petrov prevented a potential nuclear war by correctly identifying a false alarm in the Soviet Union's early warning system. The system reported that the United States had launched 5 nuclear missiles, but Petrov, trusting his instincts and suspecting a malfunction, chose not to escalate the alert, preventing a retaliatory Soviet nuclear strike. His decision is widely credited with averting World War III. The malfunction in the Soviet early warning system on September 26, 1983, was caused by a rare alignment of sunlight reflecting off of high-altitude clouds near Montana, where U.S. missile silos were located. The Soviet satellite-based detection system, OKO, mistakenly interpreted this reflected sunlight as the infrared signature of incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. If World War III almost started because of a sunlight refraction, UFOs can certainly trigger more confusion than that. It is not even close to being out of the question that if the US does not take the lead and start sharing and start open sourcing the things that we don't understand, create this international arena of confusion and mystery. And when you have mystery, that can be misperceived as a threat, and that threat turns into accidental nuclear war. The world almost came to a fucking fireball because of sunlight refracting off of clouds. So this shit is serious. And if we have stuff that we don't understand that's happening in our country, that's happening in countries around the world, that's happening all over, sometimes I think about it, I think the world could end because of a UAP UFO incident, a craft that is mistaken for nuclear launch, and it's moving, gets picked up on radar a certain way. Maybe it triggers the early warning activation system. These things are not flawless. Again, these mistakes have happened multiple times throughout history where environmental conditions or radar glitches almost ended the world. So in my humble idiot opinion, we need to start being more open source about what we do know about UAPs and what we don't know, so that we can collaborate with other countries to create a more trusting, solid, non-mysterious environment about the existing UFO knowledge to prevent sort of nuclear accident in the future. And as an idiot, as a lowly podcaster, I am cautiously optimistic about the future of UAPs and UFOs. Yes, I would love to fucking do a podcast with an alien. If that's how I die, if I go into the studio with an alien, I get fucking radiation poisoning and I go out and I record the first ever podcast with an extraterrestrial, that would be a fucking devastating, painful, and beautiful way to go. I love you guys. Thank you for tuning into this episode. It was a wild ride for me. I hope it was a wild ride for you. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Peace.